All right, welcome everybody. Today we're going to be talking about ChatGPT or kind of ChatGPT 101. If you're unfamiliar with it, again, there's so much noise out there with AI. We have Claude, we got ChatGPT, we've got Copilot, we got Gemini. Kind of what are they and what's going on here? So this will kind of break this up again so that you'll understand a little bit more about again some of the features that are in ChatGPT, some of the safety things that are in ChatGPT, and there's a lot to unpack here. So let's kind of get into it. This is me. My name is Mike Lutenberger. I'm field CTO here at Netrix. I cover all things AI, so I'm AI agnostic. So, actually, this is quite the excited to do this one because this is kind of my origin story with AI. Really, is ChatGPT was it. This is kind of when I saw ChatGPT come out. Was it November 2022? That's when I was like, this is it. This is the next thing. And I dove into it head first, and that was kind of where I started with AI. Again, have some background with some machine learning, so it kind of dovetailed into it. But this is what I would consider the mainstream of AI at that point in time. So these are some of the things we're going to get into today. Again, this isn't the all-inclusive list of all things OpenAI, ChatGPT, but again, we're going to get into the different models and how those work and codecs. We'll talk about that, deep research, custom GPTs, the mobile app itself. Again, very powerful. Agent SDK, image generation. I use this actually almost daily, and then projects and how all that goes in. And again, we'll talk about kind of throughout this of the different plans, the pricing, and all that fun stuff. Again, subject to change, like everything, even the models could change in 15 minutes, right, at the rate that things are going. But these are some of the things that we're going to get into within here. So let's talk about the foundation. What is ChatGPT? So again, ChatGPT is AI assistant, right? Very similar to Copilot, which we'll talk about Copilot in a second. Again, Gemini or any of the other Claude, right? They're all LLMs that were built on, you know, training data, right? AI, lots of data, lots of text data, almost predictive kind of search as it's going along to give you kind of the next response, right, within it. A couple things that are a few things that it does. Let's kind of take a step back. And like I said, it was publicly available November 2022. That's when, again, I saw it and was like, this is it. This is the next thing. I am all in on this and have been ever since AI. But again, like I said, it started with ChatGPT and then it moved into Copilot. Again, spoiler alert, the back end of Copilot is ChatGPT, if you are unaware of that. And then again, started moving into some of the other ones like Google. Again, really Google I/O at 2025 is when it really dove into Gemini because there were so many things. And then later that year, Claude kind of made its, I don't want to say debut, but it was starting to gain some traction. But again, I use all of them interchangeably, throughout the day, throughout the week. But this one kind of set the world on fire. This is kind of like it again. Things have, I would say, kind of toned down from when this initially launched, but it didn't matter if it was Copilot, it didn't matter if it was Gemini, it didn't matter if it was Claude. Everybody called AI ChatGPT. That was like the name. That was the name that all AI was given. Again, now people are, as they're learning more about AI, they're saying, well, no, this is Claude, and no, this is ChatGPT. But it didn't matter back in kind of this time. Everything was ChatGPT. It was just the name, right, of everything. And it is one of the, I don't know if it is but is one of the fastest growing kind of apps, programs. I don't even know how you want to say it, right? Technologies, we'll say that, right, in history. So at one point they were looking at almost 900 million unique visitors a week, which is pretty crazy to think. But let's kind of take a step back and look at other things. So it took, again, let's talk to 100 million users, right? That's kind of like the benchmark we always use for stuff. It took the mobile phone 16 years to get to 100 million. It took the internet 7 years to get to 100 million. It took Facebook, which at the time was unheard of, 4.5 years to get to 100 million. And it only took ChatGPT 3 months to get to 100 million users, right? So that just goes to show you kind of the wildfire that this kind of set on, the world, really, right? When you're talking that number of users. So these are some of the things that will help you with. Again, ask it questions. You'll get answers. Again, very typical to any other, AI out there. Have back and forth dialogue. Again, I know lots of people that do this where they will hit the microphone and they will just kind of converse back and forth with ChatGPT, have this conversation, right, back and forth within there. Again, writing help, again, drafting emails, essays, summaries, social media posts, stuff like that. Again, if you're trying to create letters or policies, this is a great way to help right within that. Research. So again, I don't want to say like this was the first or whatever, but this is what I would consider very mainstream of research. Again, Google was doing something very much, and so was Microsoft in this space. But again, ChatGPT kind of had all of the energy behind it, if you will. But some deep research, again, we're going to talk about that later. Things that it does really really well when you're kind of getting down into it. And again, this is for everyday users can use this. Code help, again, Codex. It is up there again. It's always kind of to follow the as I call them, the AI wars, where someone comes out with a new model and all of a sudden that's the latest one, and then someone else does, and then it's just kind of this ladder that just keeps coming up. Again, Codex is very much on par with Claude Code. Again, depending on who you talk to and how its uses are, some people say Claude Code is better, some people say Codex is better. I think a lot of this, and again, it's very subjective. Just like I hear a lot of people say, well, Claude is better than ChatGPT or ChatGPT is better than Claude. And again, I think that's a lot of user preference or how you are talking to it or how you are using it or how you are prompting it. I've seen that time and time again. And again, we've done that with customers where we will take a prompt and we'll put it in Gemini, we'll put it in Copilot, we'll put it in ChatGPT, we'll put it in Claude, and they all come back slightly different. They're like, well, I like that one better. The information isn't much different. They're all, again, saying the same thing, but it's presented slightly different. Again, a lot of that has to be the prompt itself. A lot of it has to be the actual LLM on the background on how it was trained, right, to respond to things on that. So I think it's very subjective. Again, yes, there's always these, SWE benchmarks and things like that that show these. And while those are cool, and I always love to see when a new model comes out that it inched out itself, right, from the previous model. Like, again, rumor has it any day to any week, either ChatGPT 5.6, we'll talk about the models next, but ChatGPT 5.6, or they might jump to 6 is coming soon within the next days or weeks. Of course, we always want to see that benchmark to go above what is currently 5.5. We always want to see that, but again, is it noticeable? Sometimes it is very noticeable within those jumps, and sometimes it's not. And like I said, a lot of that's subjective. Image creation, I use this almost every day. Almost every day for my LinkedIn post is almost exclusively done with the image generation from ChatGPT. My opinion, and my opinion only, is that at this point in time, I think it's one of the best out there. Again, I'm not sure I don't think it's the highest on the benchmark. I actually think Google has that. But again, I've used Google image generation. I use Copilot image generation quite a bit too. But to me, I always find myself going back, or I'm just not quite getting the image that I want. I'm always going back to ChatGPT because I feel like every time whatever my prompt is or whatever I'm trying to make image wise, it almost gets it right the first time around. The others I have to kind of, like Google, I always have to go back and forth with like, yep, that was good, but this, and this, and Copilot's usually pretty good on a one shot too. So those are kind of my two favorites, but again, it's all subjective, right? And then again, start about talking about some of the agentic tasks and creating agents and stuff like that. But again, this is kind of what set the world on fire was ChatGPT. But it means nothing if there's no safety right within it. So again, these are some of the compliance and safety features that are in ChatGPT. Within here, again, SOC 2, right, ISO, GDPR, all that fun stuff is going on. HIPAA, again, if you're in kind of the healthcare, all of these things are within the walls of ChatGPT. Again, you have the ability, if you're a paid user, to toggle off that you do not want it to train off of your business data, which I highly recommend that you do that. And again, encryption in transit, all of those fun things are going on. Again, if you have, we'll talk about the different plans later. Again, I want to get too deep into that, but different plans have different things. Like Enterprise has additional kind of what I would consider security and compliance controls versus if you just have a pro. So just understand that. And then again, it has some well, every LLM has guardrails in it. Again, I'm sure if you're watching the news, you are hearing all sorts of things with the government around guardrails and LLMs and LLMs getting banned and all sorts of fun stuff. But there are guardrails in here just like other ones. But also when we get to kind of the agent SDK, you can also build your own guardrails in there, which again, I really enjoy that piece of it, building some of those agents with that. I think OpenAI does a really good job at that. Again, they had something called, I think it was like called Agent Builder or something along that. A few months ago, they've kind of gone away with that and really just gone into the agent SDK. But I think it was kind of a very low barrier entry for your average user to get into kind of building agents again. I think this is when you're talking agents here, I definitely think you're getting more to a power user or even developer side of things, but it's not to say that it's impossible for the average user to do this. Choosing the right model. So again, this is where some of the confusion comes in. And again, this is not a unique confusion to ChatGPT. In my opinion, Claude does this too, where they have different models and then they have different what they call intelligence. We'll talk about that in the next slide. But here's kind of the breakdown of what we have today. Like I said, rumor has it that some folks have seen some testing in the wild. They are not sure if this is going to be 5.6 or they are making the absolute jump to 6 just quite yet. Not sure. But these are the current ones you have, and again, I think you get some different ones if you're using the API right on the back end. We'll talk more about that when we get to kind of the coding element of this. But these are kind of the mainstream or the ones that you'll see if you have like a desktop application, right? And you're using that. Is again, you're going to see 5.5 and kind of purpose, right? Why do I use this? Again, architecture, research, coding, data analysis, document heavy work, complex agents, right? 5.4, more business analysts, right? If you're kind of business, if you're in finance, if you're in HR, this is kind of where I think you will do most of your work, in my opinion, right? Is kind of in the 5.4. It's kind of, I don't want to say it's trained on, but it understands kind of business things, right? Like spreadsheets and things like that. Then we have 5.3, which is again to me the most like everyday thing that you would use, right? Writing emails, getting summaries, brainstorming some stuff, routine kind of questions, not that you're going too deep into anything within that. And then we have O3, again, more what I would consider like edge case type of things where math, science, deep logic, right? Visual analysis of something, difficult techniques, right? Difficult things that you're trying to do, difficult things that you're trying to understand within there. To me, that's where you would do, you would kind of go through there. Again, 5.5 is going to be their flagship model, right? That's kind of the one. Also keep in mind, and I talk more about this later, is that each of these carry different pricing when you're developing with it, right? And again, this isn't unique to ChatGPT. Claude does the same thing. If you are in Microsoft and you're doing Foundry, this is the same thing, right? And actually, these models are in Foundry. But the idea behind it is obviously your kind of flagship one is going to cost more than something like a 5.3, right? So it does matter, right? If you're doing development and you're looking at that, because this is going to be your overall spend. And I guess kind of what I'm getting at here is we have kind of a very flagship, very complex work 5.5 right model. If I was an organization, I wouldn't want to, and I not only wouldn't want to, but I shouldn't have to build every single agent I have with 5.5 because chances are they don't need that capability in everything I write. And again, I'm just going to just make up numbers here, but let's just pretend that I wrote like 10 agents using 5.5, right? And maybe that cost me like, $5,000 a month to run those because of that. And maybe it's just doing something like scanning a document and maybe like a legal document, right? It's kind of scanning it and coming up with some suggestions. That is probably overkill for 5.5, right? In that agent. All I would have to do is kind of dial that back slightly to even, let's just say like 5.3, and now that $5,000 a month could drop down to something like $800 a month, right, with those agents. So that's kind of the dial, if you will, of the different models. And again, you want to, if you're building one model, one agent, it probably doesn't matter, right? But again, where the industry is going, where users are going, where the customers are going, is that multiple agents, lots of agents in the environment to do things. And if you have many of them, price is going to be absolutely concerned to think about these things, right? And that's again an exercise we do with our customers when we're going down the agent route. Is basically kind of what we want to do is what is the minimum capability that we can get with this minimum model capability, right? We don't want the flagship. If I'm just scanning some documents and doing something, I probably don't need the flagship model. I'm going to go backwards, right? I'm going to kind of keep going back until I can get exactly what I need output wise, the cheapest way possible, right? From kind of an API or token perspective, if that makes sense within there. So again, just kind of think of those different kind of use cases, right? Again, um, you know, 5.5 is kind of your architecture research, deep analysis type of things. Again, 5.4 is kind of your basic business analysis, spreadsheets, just trying to understand what's going on in this Excel, those types of things. And then 5.3 is kind of your everyday stuff, right? That you're going to do within here. So just keep that in mind when you're doing that. Again, not to say that you have to do this, but this is just kind of a good rule of thumb. And again, this follows very, similar. Again, Claude does very similar thing in there where they have different models. Again, Opus and, and then those have different pieces to those within here. So now let's talk about. This can get a little confusing, so we'll try and keep this all together here. Is model intelligence. So how I like to say that this is I can take a 5.5, but then I can change it to like medium or high, right? So I know that sounds confusing, but basically all of the models that were on kind of the previous slide, you can also change their intelligence to be instant, medium, or high. So again, just kind of think of this as capabilities and even duration, right? Obviously, if I have something that's instant, it's coming fast. If I have something that's high, it's going to take much longer to do. More complex things, right? So you can almost have this kind of slider between 5.4, but maybe 5.4 high or 5.4 instant. So you're going to have kind of that in there. And really what this does, this really as kind of a user, as a developer, it really allows you to kind of get hold of those tokens, right? That you don't have to blow everything on a 5.5 high every time you're doing everything, right? And you probably don't need that for day-to-day things. But again, kind of here's the breakdown of instant would be more email, right? Brainstorming, we talked about that on the last one, right? Where brainstorming fits in here. Again, explanations of something, rewriting something that has already been written, just everyday stuff, right, is instant. And again, truth be told, when I use ChatGPT throughout the day, instant is pretty much what I have for the most part, right? Unless I am doing something super complex where I'm bringing multiple things in, this is pretty much where I stay for most of the time. Even my images, again, unless the image I am creating is very complex, I'll show you one that I actually created. And I think on that one, I actually flipped my image to medium because of all the stuff I had in there. And again, when you see it, you'll understand why. But if I was doing just basic image, like, hey, make me an image of a waterfall and a sunset, I would probably just do instant on that. So again, these all things have kind of a threshold to them. So again, medium, again, now you're kind of designing technical solutions, right? You're troubleshooting errors, right? Reviewing contracts or policies, and trying to extract some things like, hey, look at this contract and tell me where we might be, in not a good place, right? Or there's something that's missing that we should do, that kind of idea. And then again, high is, again, when we're talking kind of coding side of things, right? Where you're looking at a complex code problem. Again, project estimates, right? If you have like a bunch of maybe spreadsheets or you have a bunch of PDFs that are like, 80 pages long or something like that, and you're trying to do some comparisons or getting some estimates by pulling a bunch of stuff in, that would be a great one, right, for that. So again, you get the idea behind this, that there's kind of different sliders within it in there to have even more capabilities within it without just hitting the raw 5.5, right? I could have a 5.5, medium versus 5.5 high or something like that, right? So again, less token usage. So again, it's before it was just kind of, we just did our thing and we just went in there and just did almost everything on high or whatnot. Or again, 6 months ago or plus, there was no different really kind of thresholds to this, right? You would just have in there, like, I would pick mine and I would stick with that for the day. And again, a lot of them now have kind of an auto, right, where it will figure out what you're asking it and kind of flip it to that one. But again, this allows you to get the granular control that you so choose for those. Codex. So again, this is another huge one. Again, I don't want to even get into the developer war of which is better, Codex or GitHub or Claude Code or whatever. Again, everybody has their favorite. I have heard stories from both sides where they say no, Claude Code is the best and it just outperforms Codex. I have heard the same about Codex, that no, Codex outperforms the best over Claude Code. Again, I think a lot of that is relative to how you're developing or how you're talking to it and the results that you will get from it. But anyways, Codex is your AI coding partner, right? Again, you can build full-blown applications within here. Again, you can write features from scratch. You could just, again, give it a prompt. It will do something that you're asking it to do. It will develop an entire whatever that you're looking for within there, right? An entire program, mobile app, web app, right? Those types of things. Again, it will find and fix bugs. Again, it's gotten really good, I would say, over the past few months to this. Not to saying that it wasn't great before, but again, does really good. Again, you can do parallel development where it will do multiple things at the same time. Again, runs on a secure sandbox. Again, numbers, they are what they are, right? 2 million plus weekly. Again, this is a number that goes up and down depending on if Claude came out with a new one or this, right? So I don't get into the numbers too much about that. I just say if you like it, you like it. So again, you have the ChatGPT web app, right? You can do it in the command line, which again, probably would say most commonly done. Desktop app, so there's a dedicated desktop app outside of ChatGPT on Mac and Windows. Now, rumor has it that OpenAI is going the same way that Claude did, because again, those were two separate animals, and now there is just one massive app for Claude Code and for Claude itself. And rumor has it that sometime this summer, we are going to see the same thing where there will not be two separate applications, one for Codex, one for ChatGPT. They are going to be in one monster app. I personally want that, right? That's exactly what I want. I don't want to go in between a bunch of different apps for stuff. I just want to tabs and things within a singular app. Again, I like the way that Claude did it. That's my preference, right? Again, everybody has a different preference, but that's definitely what I like with that. And then again, we have IDE extensions, right? If you're using VS Code or something like that, you can pull it in there and use that. Always this one, right? Do I need a programmer? I would say, not necessarily, right? You can absolutely describe it, but as I like to say, I think can you just take someone from HR and can they build some web application? 100%, right? They could. Will it have security vulnerabilities? Maybe. Will it be able to be deployed exactly the way that should be? Probably not, right? So I think kind of this fantasy of anybody can just code anything yet and deploy it. I don't think we're quite there yet. I do think we will get there soon. Don't want to give predictions, maybe this summer, maybe this fall. I think it's getting so good that you absolutely can, that a lot of these guardrails get put in place for what I consider novice users. But there's a lot of times where people just don't understand the error, right, that it's throwing them. And again, I'm not saying you need to be a 15-year developer, but I think just understanding the code to a degree and what it's doing is very beneficial to using, again, not just Codex, but a Claude Code or a GitHub for Copilot. My opinion on that matter. Again, I have lots of folks that would argue against that and say, no, anybody can do it. Just in my personal experience, I think you have to understand, yes, you can have it go through and you can have it build it and tell it to fix the error. But if you really don't know what's going on, I feel you might just back yourself into a corner on something like that. But again, my 2 cents on that. But again, I'm really looking forward to kind of this monster app, all in one. Again, that's just how I like to kind of my workflow of how I like to keep everything in one spot. Deep research. So again, all of them have it. Again, Copilot has a research. Claude has a research. Google has had a research for a very long time. But again, it was very mainstream, right? Not to say that they were the first ChatGPT, but it was the most mainstream at the time, right? Because they had the momentum behind it. But so there is a kind of a deep research agent within here, and again, it does what it sounds like, right? A deep research in here. Again, you kind of ask it, it kind of makes a plan. It shows you what it's thinking. It might come back and ask you some clarifying questions, right, on it to make sure it's going down the right path, and then it kind of goes off and does its thing. Again, this is not quick. 5 to 30 minutes per task. I've seen it take longer. There's stuff I've done that's taken 40 minutes with it. So keep that in mind that this is not your typical, right? Like 5.5 instant is not that. I wouldn't use this for, skimming my emails and making responses around like that. It's kind of not what it's meant for within here. But keep that in mind, right? That this is another kind of tool in your belt. Custom GPTs. So again, this is one of my favorite features of it. We've helped lots of customers with these. Just think of it as kind of your own personal. Doesn't have to be just yours. It could be again kind of if you're a law firm or something like that. It could be kind of a group or a whole company can use the same GPT. But what a GPT is basically is anybody can create it. It's kind of a specialized version of ChatGPT. You supply it some documents, you supply it some instructions, and it's grounded in that data. You don't have to worry about, oh, does it remember what I talked about last week? No, all of that context is part of it, right, within there, within that piece of it. So I like these. These are great. These are super easy to get up and running. I mean, you could literally grab some files, give it a nice, good kind of instruction, and you are up and running in, again, it could be 5-10 minutes, right, depending on if you have everything together, right? But again, these are not too complicated to get started with. These are great within here. And again, you can also, hook up to external tools, right? Websites, APIs, or different services. Again, that's one thing I really didn't cover in here, but again, just like all the others, you can connect to M365. You can connect to Google with ChatGPT, and again, pull all of those things in. If you have, SharePoint sites, or if you have Google sites or your Google Drive, all that stuff can pull it into here, and you can use it right as a connector. And again, you can do that here too. And again, you can share these. That's what I was saying, like kind of firm wide. See a lot of this in law firms. Not to say that no other industry uses this, but it's very common, very repeatable things within here. Again, I use these quite often. I have quite a few GPTs created within here, and there's also a GPT store, right? So if there's something that you're just maybe I'm just not comfortable making one, you can go in there, and chances are you'll find one that's doing exactly what you want. There are thousands of pre-made ones in there. I recommend you go take a look at those, and there might be one that's just ready to go right out the gate that you're looking for. But again, what's great, you can think of it as, kind of the examples I have here is like a sales coach, right? You could have some product information in there. Maybe you're launching something new or a new offering. You could have it in there. Your sales team could be asking questions. Ask it, how would customers ask about this? What if a customer says this? How should I answer it with this data? Those types of things. Again, it's a great thing for support, right? You could put your support documents and things like that in there, and then have folks ask it. Again, legal, like I said, a lot of legal firms will use this on here, put policies in there, and then again, users can just ask and it will answer within there. But again, you give it instructions, it will, always answer kind of the same way. So this is a great thing to do within here. And again, I love the GPTs. The mobile app. So again, mobile app is very powerful, and you will see quite a bit of it, especially if you're looking at any YouTube videos or anything like that. You will see a lot of OpenAI doing a lot of the demos with it, especially like speaking to it and voice mode and all that fun stuff. That is very common. Take your phone and take a picture of something, and it will tell you what's going on with that. So I actually use this. True story. So I was, I think it was last weekend, 2 weekends ago, I was on my patio, and there was this type of rock that we had. It's been at the house since we got here, and I was looking to get more of it, and I didn't know what kind of rock it was. So all I did was I took out my phone, I used the camera input, and I went to ChatGPT and said, what kind of stone is this? And it found it, right, for me. So things like that, right? So again, we got our voice mode, right? So you can live spoken conversation. It can talk back to you naturally. It does not sound robotic at all. It definitely sounds like a real person. Like I said, the camera input, again, you can point it at anything. It will kind of tell you some stuff of what it is. In this case, I found out what kind of rock was in the back so I can get more of it in my patio. Image generation, again, I talked about that. You could do that all right from your phone. Again, memory, it remembers all your stuff. Again, it's seamless with the desktop app, meaning if I was doing things on the desktop app and then I shut down and I left and I pull out my phone, all that kind of context and memory is still there. You also get notifications. So like I talked about making images quite a bit of the time. So I will sometimes, again, not that this is always my workflow, but sometimes I will make an image on my desktop and then I'll leave. I'll walk away and then it will tell me on my phone that it's ready, right? So it's kind of that kind of in between, or again, if you're doing deep research, it will, on your desktop app or on the web, it will tell you on your phone, like when it's ready and stuff like that. So again, always available. Again, you could scan documents with it. It's actually pretty cool, almost like I don't want to say like a PDF, a scanner, sorry, just like a scanner, right? You could scan it and it can, summarize it and tell you what's going on. Again, menus or something like that if you're uncertain what it is within there. But again, it's on iOS and Android. Agent SDK, like I said, this took some changes over the years, or years. I make this sound like it's 100 years old. Over the past year, like I said, I think it was I actually built quite a few on it. I think it was called like Agent Builder or something like that. Again, OpenAI went away with that, but it was a really cool way to just kind of prototype some agents within there, and this is kind of the evolution of it, right? That this is kind of where they've put it now, is that now this is it. That piece has gone away. But again, this is kind of your idea of making an agent or multiple agents that talk to each other, kind of a system of agents. And again, as you see, we can have agent handoffs. You can put your guardrails in there, right? You can control what those are and what things you don't want it to talk about and what happens if someone does, trigger one of these guardrail things. Again, you can see everything that's going on with it step by step, full transparency, and it is open source, right? So you can find it on GitHub. And again, if you're like, I'm not sure if I trust it, again, tens of thousands of people do. So you're good to go here. But again, this is what I would kind of go into the more pro code or power user kind of avenue of things, of doing things within here. But again, this is their version of kind of the agent. Again, everybody has kind of their agent flavor within here. Again, from Copilot to Claude to Gemini, this is kind of ChatGPT's version to it. Again, I talked about image generation. Again, it first came out this right now. As of today, it's version 2. That's what they're calling it. But again, this released over a year ago, right? March 2025. I thought it was so-so. But again, back in March 2025, I pretty much thought all of AI image generation was so-so. It didn't matter if it was Google or anybody. I mean, all of them, like a human would have like 7 fingers and, weird stuff like that. Again, those days are pretty much gone. I haven't seen that in such a long time. Not to say that they can't make mistakes. Of course they can, but we are now on version 2. I want to say it's maybe a month old, maybe a little over a month old. I'm not too sure, but again, text to image, you can make logos, all sorts of fun stuff within here. Again, you can add it, iterate on it, edit it. I've done this quite a bit where, oh, no, maybe move it here. Oh, no, that doesn't look right. Move it here. We'll do that, all that fun stuff. And again, you can upload your own, right? Obviously, it will create everything I'm talking about to date is been creating. But you could take existing photos and have it do things again, remove backgrounds, remove objects, all that fun stuff. It will also produce, it will produce a size, but then you have the option to go in and give it different ones. Like I want a widescreen format, or I want a, kind of a square. You have kind of the option of what the final output will look like. And then again, all sorts of different styles of photorealistic to cartoons, watercolors. Again, you describe it, it will make it. But one of the really cool ones was infograph. That was again one that came out, and I'll show you. This is a real one. I made this. So again, you might not see all the text in there, but again, this was a one prompt. I gave it a lot. It was like a couple paragraphs of stuff that I wanted. Again, this is my dog, but I wanted it to go in there and make kind of an infograph. And really what I was testing, and this is literally, I think, the first thing I tested with Image Gen 2 of this. This was the first thing I tried, was because that's what OpenAI was saying. It was that it's really good at taking a lot of information, stuffing it into one singular kind of image, if you will, right? That was kind of the claim to fame with it. Because again, if you tried this before, it was a mess. It was just a mess trying to make sense of what it was making with it. Again, not a knock at OpenAI. All of them were like this, in my opinion, at the time. But this is, again, this is actual output. This is the real image that I created with ChatGPT. Infograph around my dog and the history of it and all that fun stuff. And again, you could see there's a whole lot going on here. But what I like about it is there's a lot, but it's very clean, right? You can absolutely, again, I understand that you're probably not seeing all the minute little text, but understand that, the way that things are laid out and whatnot, this is, again, I was pretty shocked, we'll say, when I saw this. I thought for sure I was going to have to go and iterate on it a little bit more, and this was truly a one shot. So very impressed with kind of how this came out. Projects. So projects is kind of an organized workspace. Again, it has full context of everything that you're doing. Project, it sounds like what, if you're in business world, this is kind of what you're doing, right? Are you deploying something in the environment? You could create a project for that and throw all the files in there. Again, custom instructions, and again, keep the context of what you're asking within there, meaning I can go into a project, ask it about something today. 2 weeks from now, I can go back into that project, ask it more things, and it remembers what I said, 2 weeks prior to that. So all of those fun things are in there. Again, you don't have to re-explain these things. It understands. And again, you can have, custom instructions in there. Like, I want you to do this. Again, you can, put deep research in there or different agents in there if you're trying to do complex things. These are great to stand up. Again, super easy to do. Get one, go up, just go in there, create a project, and then you can keep going with it. But also what's great about this is, let's pretend that maybe you didn't go into the project and you just went to just the normal chat and you started typing and some response came back and you're like, oh, that would be really good if that was in the project. You can absolutely take that and move that after you have asked ChatGPT and it's come back with a response in just basic chat. You can move that over to a project. So now that context is part of that project. So that's a great way. So I just kind of have a comparison here, right, of this is a project and this is what a custom GPT is, because they sort of are similar, but they're sort of also not, right, within here. So again, projects are kind of personal workspaces, right, around here. GPTs, while technically they could be absolutely personal, you can share these out. You could also share projects out, publicly and whatnot. I would almost say, like, kind of think of it this way, is that, or how I think of it, is a project is kind of a folder and you're stuffing stuff in there. GPTs are like mini agents, right, that are going to go do stuff. So that's kind of how I like to look at them. Again, maybe that's not the right analogy for everybody, but that's how I view it. Is I look at projects as a folder. I put things in there. I put prompts in there. I put instructions in there, and it's all self-contained in there. And then custom GPTs are repeatable things that I want to do a certain way over and over and over. So an example would be, again, project. I think I gave you a good idea of a project if we're deploying something new in the environment, right? Hey, we're migrating from on-prem to M365. So there's all sorts of things that need to happen, and I always want to keep context of that. That would probably be a project. I would stuff things in there. Now, maybe I write SOWs, right? And I almost want to rinse and repeat of everything that I'm doing. I would probably make a GPT around that, right? That has custom instructions, maybe even has samples of what that looks like, so that when I'm asking it, it will always kind of redo that same thing over and over. So again, it might be a good way to look at it. So this is kind of all the things that we talked about right within here. I'm sure I've missed a few because, again, this stuff is so big, but these are kind of all the big ones. Again, I didn't get too much into the API and all that fun stuff. Next slide, I think we'll talk about the different plans, because there are different plans that you're in that you can do. But again, you have different models right in here. From API has different models from what you'll see in kind of the desktop app. You have Codex, you have deep research, you have your own custom GPTs. Again, you don't need any special licensing or any skills for that. You can just create them yourself. Again, we help customers with that. Some are just not comfortable making their first couple GPTs. So when we're doing a project with them, we will show them how to create some of their GPTs. Some customers just don't want to do it, and they call us in and make a bunch of GPTs for them. Again, there's no right or wrong answer there. Again, we have our mobile app. Again, I think the strong suit with that is kind of the voice conversation with it. Not to say you can't do this in desktop, you absolutely can, but I just think it's more natural for folks to pull out their phone and talk to it versus their computer. I guess you could argue a phone is a computer. Again, agent SDK, image generation. Again, this is by far my favorite feature to date with it because it just seems to do everything I want it to do. And then again, we have projects. These are the plans and pricing as of today. Again, this could all change at any point in time, but they have individual plans, right? And that goes from free to Go, which is $8, to Plus, which is $20, to Pro, which is $100, right? Again, at the time of right now, could be different tomorrow. But again, these have different kind of capabilities, right? You get basically more as you kind of go in the paid tier, you get more reasoning, you get more, tokens, if you will, right, to do those types of things, more usage as you're kind of going down that tier within there. And again, the free one has limited messages, and then then you're kind of done for the day. And as you get down, you get more and more of that, right, and more access to different models too within there. But then if you're in business and enterprise, sorry, you have again the $20 plan, and then you get single sign-on, MFA, all that fun stuff, which again is super important in any enterprise piece. Within here, again, it's kind of a team workspace and admin controls, all the things you would expect. Again, if you were in M365, you have the tenant admin. If you're on Google, you have the workspace admin. Same thing here, right? But again, this will hook into, if you so choose to, have it integrated into those environments. And then there's enterprise. Again, it's custom. I've heard all sorts of different numbers, right? So I wouldn't even want to say them because I've heard some very high end things that you have to have a minimum threshold of this. I've heard very low. So again, I think it really just depends on who, the salesperson is really, if that makes sense around that piece of it. But again, this is going to vary off your user count too. And then again, this is kind of, I talked a little bit about API, right? So if you're kind of using the code side of things to go in and you're making your own agents or you're making your own custom app, and you're kind of integrating it into or using ChatGPT or their models on the back end, this is kind of what you're looking at. And basically these are 1 million tokens in and out. So again, this is kind of what I was talking about earlier about different models have different prices. So you can kind of see what that looks like within there as you're kind of going down, right? That they get cheaper as you get to older models. These are some of the offerings that we have right around this stuff. We help, again, users find use cases, the ROI of, do I even need ChatGPT and which one do I need? Do I even need to use ChatGPT, or do I need Copilot, or do I need Claude, right? Understanding that piece. Again, we help with the data readiness, understanding your security posture. Again, we can create agent in a day, show folks how to do that. We can help with custom GPTs, like I said, MCP servers, or just general training in general, whether that's around ChatGPT specifically or AI as a whole. We can do that all. And then again, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out at info@netrixglobal.com, and we can reach out and have a conversation, dive deeper into it. So I appreciate everybody's time today. I thank you very much and hope you have a great one.